This is Newsday on the BBC. I'm Rico Hizon in Singapore. The headlines. America's gun lobby hits back, accusing its critics of exploiting the Florida school shooting for political gain.
To stop a bad guy with a gun, it takes a good guy with a gun.
North Korea says it is sending its intelligence chief to South Korea for the Olympics closing ceremony. Donald Trump is sending his daughter.
I'm Kasia Madeira in London. Also in this program, from the waste bins of fast food restaurants back onto the plates of the Philippine poor, we explore the so-called pagpag industry. It's a Lunar New Year tradition, lucky money in red envelopes. But after one Chinese student sued her own parents, we ask, is it a gift or a right?
Live from our studios in Singapore and London. This is BBC World News. It's Newsday.
Glad you could join us. It's 9 in the morning here in Singapore, 1 a.m. in London, and 8 in the evening in the eastern United States, where the American gun lobby has lashed out against calls for tougher weapons limits. Relatives and friends of the 17 students who died in Florida have called for the measures to stop another school shooting. But the head of the National Rifle Association said it was an elitist plot to infringe on American freedoms. Wayne LaPierre said teachers should be armed instead, an idea supported by President Trump. Here's John Sopel.
Will the Florida school shooting come to be seen as a landmark moment, when impotence gave way to rage and rage led to action?
Never again!
The vociferous students who've taken to the streets are bringing change, but not always in the way they'd have wanted. The president making clear that he thinks the way to make schools more secure is to train and arm more teachers. Tweeting today, if a potential sicko shooter knows that a school has a large number of very weapons-talented teachers and others who'll be instantly shooting, the sicko will never attack that school. Cowards won't go there. Problem solved. He first floated the idea at an emotional White House meeting last night with victims' families. One of those in attendance was a pupil at the Parkland School, Sam Zeif.
How is it that easy to buy this type of weapon?
Afterwards, he was dismissive about the president's plan.
The arming teachers is just not what we need. You know, this is a problem because guns were brought into our school. Why would it make sense to bring more guns into school?
And the president has held another White House meeting today to discuss the issue, promising action that will win the support of many of the students.
I think we're making a lot of progress, and I can tell you there's a tremendous feeling that we want to get something done.
He wants increased background checks on those seeking to purchase weapons. Ban bump stocks. This is the device that turns a semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun. And he backs raising the minimum age for buying a rifle to 21. To those arguing for comprehensive gun control measures, what Donald Trump is proposing might seem like teeny-weeny baby steps. But any measure will have to get congressional approval, and doing that is never achieved without a fight. And no one fights for gun rights like the National Rifle Association. Today, in a rare public appearance, the leader of the NRA spoke out, and he was in no mood for compromise.
Lean in, listen to me now, and never forget these words. To stop a bad guy with a gun, it takes a good guy with a gun. Thank you very much.
In other words, what America needs is more guns, not fewer. The president is being pulled in one direction by the NRA, another by the students. If past form is a guide, there'll only be one winner, and it won't be the students. John Sopel, BBC News, Washington.
We will have more on the US gun debate in a moment, but first of all, let's bring you up to date with some of the others' top stories today, because a senior North Korean official blamed for 2 attacks on South Korea that killed 50 people will attend the closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics. Kim Yong-chol will also have a meeting with South Korea's President Moon Jae-in. Now, South Korea hopes that this will continue to warm relations between the two countries.
We believe that the North Korean high-level delegation's participation in the closing ceremony will help improve the relationship between South and North Korea and bring peace to the Korean peninsula, including the North's denuclearization. So we will accept their visit to the South.
Also in the news today, the UN Security Council has not been able to agree on a humanitarian ceasefire for Syria. Russia said that a draft resolution needed amendments, but Western diplomats have called the move a delaying tactic to allow the Syrian government to carry on with its offensive in eastern Ghouta. Syria too says that the resolution is flawed.
We will not succumb to those who have supported terrorism in Syria. We will not be complacent to the plans of the governments of 5 countries that met in Washington last month to divide Syria.
The UN Children's Fund UNICEF is warning that almost 750,000 Rohingya children face huge risks for years to come. In a report to mark 6 months since the start of the crisis, UNICEF says that hundreds of thousands of children remain trapped in makeshift camps, denied education and at risk of disease and violence.
We are reaching now one of the worst points of the history of the Rohingya.
A policeman has died during violent clashes between rival football fans in the Spanish city of Bilbao. More than 500 police were deployed for Athletic Bilbao's Europa League match against Spartak Moscow on Thursday evening. Supporters launched fireworks at each other and at least 5 arrests were made. At the Winter Olympics, Hungary has made history with its first ever Winter Olympics gold. The short track speeders were the ones to do it, beating the favoured South Koreans. There are 4 gold medals to be won on Friday, including the long track speed skating and also the women's figure skating. And Hong Kong's harbour front is known for its glistening skyscrapers. Now, a new collection, a skyline, will be added to the skyline. A collection of works by 19 local and international artists is to increase public access to art in a city which is actually associated with exclusive high-end galleries.
Let's return now to our lead story, and the National Rifle Association criticizing those calling for tougher gun control laws following the Florida school shooting. For more, let's cross over now to Los Angeles, and we're joined by the BBC's Peter Bose. There are reports, Peter, that when the school shooting started in Florida, there was an armed sheriff officer, but he failed to engage the shooter. What more do you know?
Last few hours, and it seems that there is video footage of the armed police officer. He was on duty, he was in uniform, he was on the property at the time. He made it to the building where the shooting was taking place. He was apparently outside of that building for about 4 minutes. The shooting lasted for 6 minutes, but crucially he did not go inside. Now, this has been revealed by the Broward County Sheriff, who said that he was sick to the stomach. He was devastated upon realizing what had happened. He was asked what the deputy should have done. He said he should have gone in, he should have addressed the killer, and he should have killed the killer. Now, this deputy was initially suspended without pay pending an internal investigation, but it's since emerged that he has in fact resigned. He has retired from the force.
There's a lot of focus right now on President Donald Trump's tweets supporting armed teachers. How are ordinary Americans reacting to this?
Well, there's a lot of mixed feelings, and I was talking to a group of people here in Los Angeles earlier today, women, there was a nurse, there was a mother, and they were aghast. They were astonished at the prospect, even the suggestion that teachers in the schools where their children attend should be armed with weapons. They say the teachers that they know want to do just that. They want to teach, and they don't want to be used as armed guards. Now, California, of course, is a relatively liberal state, so this isn't necessarily a cross-section of opinion across the country, but I think it does, to some extent, reflect a certain huge amount of disquiet upon hearing the President about 24 hours ago talking in such positive terms, and as you say, just tweeting earlier today about his enthusiasm for seeing teachers armed with guns.
The question now is, what happens next after all this rhetoric? Thank you so much for joining us, Peter Bose in Los Angeles.
Is 8 too young for children to receive careers advice? Well, that's the recommendation submitted to a parliamentary inquiry in the Australian state of Victoria. The aim is to explain the different job options available. Research indicates that children divide jobs into what's suitable for a boy and what's suitable for a girl from as early as 7 years old. And those ideas tend to come from traditional perceptions. Popular jobs for boys include being a police officer, while teaching is a popular choice for girls. Well, the same research also showed exposing children to different choices is key. A little earlier, I spoke to Bernadette Gigliotti from the Career Education Association to the Victorian Government, which actually submitted the evidence to Parliament, and she explained what her organisation hopes to achieve.
We're aiming to ensure that young people have an opportunity for quality career education programs. We're not talking about career advice. I want to make that quite clear. In terms of our submission, we're talking about career education, structured programs from a younger age that allow young people to explore the world of work and to get a good understanding of the language of career prior to having to make more informed choices as they progress through their secondary education. So in our submission...
Apologies for interrupting, but just by introducing children from as early as 8 years old to the world of work, are we not curtailing their childhood somewhat?
Not at all. I think that young children are quite curious. They're already exploring the world, and work makes up a significant component of the world and what we have available to them. So I think that we're not actually curtailing, we're opening up their eyes. This natural curiosity to explore and to find out what could possibly be available to them is part of a good educational progress. I'll draw your attention to quite a significant piece of research that's come out of the UK called Drawing the Future, where young children, 7 and 8 year olds, were asked to actually draw occupational choices. And in this particular piece of research, it showed quite clearly that if we are able to start the conversation quite early with young people, they will be able to perhaps break down some of the myths and some of the stereotypes that come with very old paradigms in relation to occupational choices.
But what led you, briefly if you would, to that age? Because it is a young age, isn't it? 8, we're talking about very young children here.
Yes, but well, our evidence that we've certainly conducted ourselves, but also from right around the globe, there's quite a bit of international evidence that suggests that if we start quite early having the conversation about what makes up the world of work and what interests them, what skill sets they might have already, their talents, and where those talents could be used, this evidence base says quite clearly that we can start to have those conversations in a way that will allow young people to explore a wider selection of opportunities.
And it is Bernadette Gigliotti from the Career Education Association to the Victorian Government speaking earlier to Kasha. You're watching Newsday on the BBC, live from Singapore and London. So to come on the program. Second-hand food, we report from the Philippines, where millions of poor city dwellers rely on the so-called pagpag trade.
Also coming up on the program, the Lunar New Year tradition of giving children lucky money, but can parents pocket it? According China has a say.
Glad you're staying with us. You're watching Newsday on the BBC. I'm Rico Hizon in Singapore.
And I'm Kasia Madeira in London. Our top stories this hour. America's gun lobby group, the NRA, has fiercely defended weapons ownership despite demands for stricter controls after last week's Florida school shooting.
A senior North Korean official blamed for 2 attacks on South Korea that killed 50 people is to attend the closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics. And a letter containing white powder that was sent to the office of Prince Harry and his fiancée Meghan Markle is being treated as a race hate crime, according to London police. This story is popular on BBC.com. Well, let's now take a look at some of the front pages from around the world. And we start off with the Arab news, with its Middle East leading English language daily. And it is leading on the intensive bombardment of eastern Ghouta. It reports that Saudi Arabia is calling on the Syrian regime to halt the offensive, while aid agencies are struggling to reach those who are in need of help. Shifting now our attention to the Gulf news, and they've got more on the story. We are leading on the issue of gun control in the United States following the school massacre in Florida. They are reporting that President Trump has endorsed stiff measures by pushing for more background checks and raising the minimum age of buyers to 21. And finally, the China Daily is featuring an Olympic hero, Wu Dajing, celebrating a victory after winning the men's 500-meter final of short-track speed skating competition at the Winter Games. That is his victory lap. The paper reports that with his victory, this gives China their first gold medal for the Games, triggering a standing ovation from hundreds of Chinese spectators.
We're going to turn to the Philippines now, where it's estimated that more than 21 million people live under the poverty line. In the capital, Manila, many struggle to find work and the money to buy food. That has led to the rise of the trade of pagpag. That's food that's scavenged from rubbish tips, then cooked and sold in poor communities. Our Philippines correspondent, Howard Johnson, visited Happyland Bangaray to meet the people involved in this trade.
Renato Conde digs through bags of rubbish, looking for scraps of meat thrown away by fast food restaurants in Manila. He became a pagpag collector after he lost his job in the nearby docks.
My boss gives me around $6 a week after he has sold the pagpag. Somehow it's okay because it helps with house expenses, rice, and other food.
Like Renato, millions of Filipinos live under the poverty line, and in the overcrowded slums of Manila, this is what the poorest of the poor eat. Pagpag, food thrown away by others.
So it's 4 o'clock here in Happyland Barangay. I've seen different groups of people sifting through the rubbish already this morning. The smell here is very intense. It smells like a mixture of cheese and vinegar and sick. Lots of maggots on the floor. I've seen rats running past. I have to say, this isn't what you would expect from a place preparing food to sell to the public.
From here, restaurant owner Norberto Lucian buys the salvaged meat. Pagpag is all he can afford.
Pagpag is for poor people like us. We make it because we need to temporarily relieve hunger the cheapest way we can. Before I cook it, I remove any bones to make sure that only the meat goes into the actual food. Once the meat is separated from the bones, I wash it.
To mask the rotting smell, he cooks the meat with strong herbs and spices. Charities are working with local authorities to supply clean food and educate people about the risks of recycled meat. Project Pearls helps to feed malnourished children every day.
If you just observe and like ask the kids how old are they, you realize that they're very short and very small for their age. Some of them, like they will say that they're 12 years old, but they look like 8 years old. So you know that there's a problem with nutrition. They're stunted.
But for Norberto's regular customers, eating healthy, nutritious food is the least of their worries.
I eat pagpag because it's tasty. It's really good to eat. It's about having a strong stomach. Us here, well, we're used to it.
Howard Johnson there reporting from Manila in the Philippines. We're going to bring you a story from the United States. These are the latest pictures from California, where an apartment complex is on fire. U.S. media is reporting that at least 100 firefighters are at the scene. This building in Pico Rivera in Southern California appears to be a multi-story building. The fire seems to have spread lengthways, affecting multiple apartments. The fire was first reported in the attic. It then quickly engulfed the first and second floors. A portion of the roof has collapsed. Now, firefighters have been standing on the roof of an adjoining building in an effort to battle this blaze. Smoke has been seen 20 miles away as far as Hollywood, and the fire department says that the building has been evacuated, that one patient has been transported to a local hospital, but there's no word on other casualties yet. Of course, we'll keep you posted.
This is a Lunar New Year tradition. Parents giving children red envelopes containing lucky money. Well, it's meant to express good wishes for the year ahead and provide a best egg for the future. But whose money is it? Well, this week, a young Chinese woman went to court and forced her parents to pay $9,000 in university fees, a sum she believes was covered by her lucky money. Well, earlier, I spoke with An Do, a reporter who covers Asian American issues for the Los Angeles Times. I asked her, whose money is it? Parents or children?
I think a lot of people will say both. You know, the kids get a portion because it is their gift, and the parents who provide all the other necessities during the year want to have something else, you know, to save.
And you're Vietnamese, Anne. During your time, when you were a kid and when you were still a single adult, how much did you receive in terms of lucky money in your red packet?
Oh, several $100s every season, especially when it's a time for big family reunions. You have all your relatives and cousins, and you could get $300, $500. So that's a lot of money to get all at once, especially if you're 10 years old or 8 or 11.
So at which age do you think should all of this money be transferred to the child?
What I see in a lot of families is when they get to the college years, they keep the whole loot.
The whole loot. So right now I have 3 red packets with me, and just taking a look at what's inside, I don't even think it adds up to $500 or $1,000. Maybe you could give us some explanation, Anne, why the tradition of red packets? Because in Mandarin it's called Hong Bao, and in Cantonese, Lei Shi.
And in Vietnamese, it's called Lì Xì. And it's a tradition for the elders to give to their children and grandchildren and to the older unmarried adults. And this is a wish for good luck. It's also a symbol, kind of like carry you into prosperity, into the new year. And children line up and share their best wishes for good health and happiness to the older members of their family before they get the gifts.
All right, this tradition is very popular, of course, because it's a Lunar New Year holiday. What about in the United States? The Hong Bao and the Lai Si, is it still popularly practiced?
Oh, yes. The Asian Americans have carried that on in the U.S. And as a contrast, it's similar to celebrating Halloween. You know, if you don't dress up in a costume, you can't expect to go door to door and receive treats. If you don't dedicate your best wishes to your family members, you can't expect to get crisp new bills.
All right, in China, we just read about this case, a child suing their parents for $9,000. Has there been any kind of similar event in the United States wherein, you know, kids not getting their money and suing their child?
I haven't heard about this. This is very rare. It's going to be big news in our community. But, you know, a lot of parents will say, well, you're 12 years old, you got $300-400, let's put a portion of that into your college fund, and then you can spend the rest, you know, on new clothes, books, shoes. And younger kids, I think, will fall in line with that practice. The older kids have car expenses, insurance, textbooks, and so they don't expect to be able to, or to have to, turn over the entire total to their parents.
Ando there speaking to Rico about Lucky Money. I tell you who hasn't been lucky, and that's the social media app Snapchat, because it's lost $1.5 billion worth in market value, all because this celebrity, that is Kylie Jenner, doesn't like its new redesign. Imagine that.